There comes a moment in the journey when it all falls into place. Not because we planned it, but because love had an ulterior motive all along we were being prepared to see. This is that moment for me. I'm Giselle Gamby, coach, mentor, and podcaster, and this is the Intuitive Pull Podcast Season 6. This season is for the ambassadors, the evolutionary leaders, the ones who dare to go first, the ones whose mission it is to lead from the consciousness of love and break the sound barrier of what is possible. This is for those who know they are part of something greater, and for those who never thought they were. My intention is that Season 6 will change your life, that it will activate your mission and liberate you to lead from the abundance of your wisdom and be in your full-bodied self-expression no matter what, because love is the ultimate mastermind. Welcome back to the Intuitive Pull podcast. Before you start listening to this episode, I need to let you know that this is a part 2 to a part 1 that I recorded 2 days ago. Now, 2 days ago was Tuesday. I did not have the piece that I'm about to speak to here in part 2 on Tuesday. I received it yesterday. You really need to listen to part 1 before you can receive and place what I'm sharing today in the context that I shared in part 1. So please go back and listen to part 1. Now, very briefly, what I shared in part 1 was this massive piece of awareness that I had a very humbling experience a week ago when I realized that I had invalidated, made myself not worthy of, made my multi-dimensional gifts not good enough, that really dishonored a very big part of me, really since I was 25, when I started to experience multi-dimensional experience after multi-dimensional experience after multi-dimensional experience. And maybe what I'll share today is the first multi-dimensional experience, and then I'm going to get to the point of this episode. So when I was 25, I had just left my first husband and I had moved back home to my parents' house, and I was staying there, and my parents were in Europe. One night I was lying in bed and I was awake, and I had this apparition. As I'm lying down, I had this apparition come like horizontally on top of me, and it was of a woman, and it was an old woman, and she looked very angry, yet she was caressing my face. And it was very real to me, and that had never, anything like that, I'd never experienced anything like that before. And I wondered if that was my birth mother, because I'm adopted. I wondered if that was my birth mother coming to tell me, like as if it was a cry for help. I wondered if she was sick and she was trying to connect with me. And so I decided to search for her. Up until that point, I'd never had any desire to, because I have such a beautiful family. But that experience made me curious. As I said, I felt like she was calling out for me. This was at a time when the adoption laws had just changed, and we could, mother or child could now start searching for each other. So I'll give you a very quick snapshot of, without going into the whole process of how I found her, but when I did find her, the mediator who had found her for me suggested that we write letters to each other to begin with, to, connect softly. And so I shared that experience with her in my letter to her, and she wrote back to me and she said that she knew who that person was, and it wasn't her, it was her housekeeper when she was growing up. And without giving too much away from about her own personal story, her housekeeper, who she met years later on her deathbed, said that she had one regret in life, and that was that she had never offered for my birth mother to keep me and to live with her. And that the way that it described her was exactly her. So this was the beginning of my relationship with my multidimensional nature. And then in 2002, I shared the experience in the previous episode that literally changed my life, and I left my HR career and became a coach. And I've had several incredible, life-changing, overnight transformations in my business since then. And then I started to question, because those experiences, to the extent to which they were happening, lessened over the last few years. And I started to wonder, were they ever even real? Did I ever really have that capacity? Because I had not been experiencing them to the level that I had been over the last couple of years. And in the last episode, I was talking about how I was humbled, really, really humbled, and to these God-given gifts, and how I am now choosing to return, or not have, I have chosen to return to them. And yes, I have been returning to them already. However, had I not received what I did yesterday, I would not be able to return to them with the liberation that I am choosing. So yesterday, I decided to have a session with a beautiful man called Michael Muir from the Soul Magic Collective. You can find him on Facebook, who I had been having one-on-one sessions where he would facilitate light language. And hearing all that sound would have me really see things in my multidimensional nature. And there were several times that by being in the presence of sound and then receiving visions, I would then have big new callings that would arrive, and then I would, in all my vulnerability, would follow those callings and amazing things would happen. And I hadn't had a one-on-one session with Michael in a few years. So I found that curious, right? Like the multidimensional experiences had lessened and I had not been seeing Michael one-on-one. So I decided to have a one-on-one, which I did with him yesterday. And in my one-on-one, what was revealed was that in the end of 2022 until about April 2023, some things went down in my business that hurt, that created some chaos. And whilst they were cleaned up, I took responsibility 100%, several times, humbled several times. And whilst I thought that that had completed in April 2023, what I didn't realize until yesterday was I was still holding on to blame inside of myself and shame. I should have done it better. I shouldn't have got things wrong. I should have been better than that. Now, I didn't know that I was holding that within me, but here is the humdinger. Whilst I had those stories unconsciously that I should have done it better, I should have known better, I shouldn't have messed things up as I did, I now unconsciously made myself unworthy of receiving God's love for me. I made myself unworthy of receiving God's love for me, not for my clients. Clients full on leading from the consciousness of love, miracles all over the place. But from me and my experience of myself in my life, I had cut that off. because I had this blame and shame sitting inside of myself that I should have done better. When I received that yesterday in that session, I knew that I had got to the core. I knew that I had got to the root. I knew that I had got to the root of why my experience of life in the last couple of years in this multidimensional capacity has not at all been to the joy and the wonder and the awe and the awesomeness of life. It just has not been at that level as what I used to experience. And it's interesting because over the last couple of years, I have not downloaded as I used to. I used to sit there and feel the energy and type through my fingers. I have not channeled. I have begun now. But that version of me has been absent. And now I know why, because I made myself unworthy of receiving God's love for me and my experience of life because I made myself wrong, even though I didn't know I did that, even though I thought I'd cleaned that up. And so it's been quite an experience receiving that. First of all, there was sadness, for the loss, for the disconnection, for the separation from all that is. And then there was gratitude for the fact that I got to experience what it feels like to dismember myself for myself, not for my clients, for myself. I got to experience what loss feels like and disconnection feels like and dismembering feels like. And I had gratitude for that. And of course, that had to happen. I had to see that I made myself unworthy of receiving God's love for me. Because unless I saw that, would I really be able to fully return to my multidimensional gifts? Somewhat. Certainly for my clients, for everybody else. But for my experience of life, for my joy, for my wonder, for my wow, did that just happen? Which is what used to happen all the time? No. So I'm beyond grateful. And I know that whilst I have been speaking to many people about this new, this calling that I keep receiving, that it's not about breakdown always. It is sometimes, absolutely. But for some people, it's not about breakthrough coming through breakdown. For some people who have years of experience and wisdom, it's actually about harvesting the abundance of our wisdom. It's about being in our wholeness and our fullness and all the wealth that exists within us, and allowing that to take direction in our leadership, in our generosity of spirit, in service to other people. I have been sharing that message. Some people have heard and some people have not been able to hear, and now I know why they have not been able to hear. Because within them exists the same thing that existed within me until yesterday. Within them is blame and shame that they're probably not even aware of, that has cut themselves off from being in receipt and devotion of God's love for them. And the reason why I'm recording this podcast is to speak to that so people can recognize themselves if that has been true for them. And that is the reason why life has not felt fully, has not felt wondrous. It's the reason why sometimes life has felt like pushing shit uphill. It's the reason why things have been slow. It's the reason why things have been flat. And it's also the reason why the focus has been so on the ground, taking responsibility, cleaning things up, taking responsibility, cleaning things up, rather than opening and living from the fullness of our God-given gifts. Because this is really important to hear, a grievance and a miracle cannot coexist. This is what A Course in Miracles teaches. A grievance and a miracle cannot coexist. You either are in a paradigm of grievance judgment, humanity separated from our God self, or we're in the sacred nature of our humanity, knowing that our humanity, held in its sacred nature, is always bringing us back to our divinity, always. Sometimes we have to experience loss. Sometimes we have to experience forgetting. Sometimes we have to experience the slowness of life when that happens, the absence of magic, no magic there, in order to be worthy of God's love for us, in order to be worthy of living and leading from our God-given gifts. And so thus we return. And thus is the calling that I am now charged with. This morning I was in bed, I was awake, I was having my morning coffee, I was on my laptop chatting to different people, looking at Facebook, and all of a sudden I received the word deliverance. I had never used that word. It had never meant anything to me. But when I received that word, it meant everything to me. To be released from the bondages of unworthiness, to be released into the liberation of leading from the fullness of our capacity, of our multidimensional God-given gifts. This is deliverance. And I literally saw people, I felt like I was in some biblical movie. I literally saw people coming to me, like as if in a biblical movie, all people who are ready for their own deliverance, who are ready to be released from the bondages of their unworthiness that have kept them much smaller than who they are. And so I remind you, as I shared in part 1, that there is a new mastermind that actually arrived to me when I was on a spin bike. I feel very euphoric when I'm in that environment and listening to this incredible music. I've never delivered a 3-month mastermind. The reason why it is a mastermind is because the power of speaking out our process, the power of speaking out the places in which we are now meeting our humility and, getting on our knees, the power of speaking out our return to our God-given gifts, ones that we know of and ones that we don't even know of, the power of speaking it out to people who are also experiencing their own return. It cements it. It cements it. It expands it. It lightens, brings light to it, brings more light to it. So on the 1st of August, we'll begin the return, a 3-month mastermind. And what I want to see, and what I'm excited about, is that the more we lean into our vulnerability around our multidimensional gifts, the more we experience the miraculous and the more we experience overflow. This is exactly what I experienced in 2021 and 2022. I looked at my 2021 and 2022 and I had vulnerable moment after vulnerable moment after vulnerable moment of leaning into and leading from my multidimensional gifts, which was the beginning of this podcast at the end of 2021. And there was nothing but miracles that occurred over those years and so much overflow for everyone. This is what I want the mastermind to be about. I want it to be an experiment. How far can you go when you lead from your multidimensional gifts, when you have been liberated to lead from your multidimensional gifts? How far can you go? How many miracles can you experience for yourself and for others? And how much overflow can you receive? 1st of August, we begin. For anyone who chooses to connect with me now, to talk about, to register, to inquire, to discover with me, uncover with me, whoever decides to register for that 3-month mastermind called The Return, we will actually start now. I have done this many times before. When there's a start date as a group and somebody commits early on, I want to reward that. So we start one-on-one as soon as you commit. Now, not everybody wants group work. So that mastermind will involve group work and one-on-one. Not everybody wants group work. Some people really enjoy and need at that time the privacy of and the intimacy of a one-on-one experience. They want to keep it to themselves, and that is absolutely fine. I do that with myself at times. And so if that is the case, if that is what you prefer, then we do the 4-month harvest program, which is exactly to the same end result, exactly the same experience, except we are one-on-one and I'm the person who you are speaking to, and I'm the person that is witnessing you. And I'm also the person that is sharing everything that's going on for me. That happens whether that's in harvest or whether that's in the return. So reach out to me. Thank you for listening, for witnessing my process, my return, which truly I feel completely surrendered, completely surrendered. It's a beautiful, beautiful feeling that I'm remembering. I've been here before, and it's a beautiful feeling to surrender, to let go and surrender. Thank you. Ciao, ciao.